Hello seekers of shadowed histories, and welcome to Grim Histories for Sleep. Tonight we don't just open a dusty chronicle of the past, we invite you to step directly into its chilling embrace. We journey to a time when the veil between worlds felt perilously thin, and the mundane life of a villager could be shattered by a whisper, a glance of fear that festered in the heart of the community. Our destination is the late 15th century, specifically the cusp of the 1490s, in a small, isolated village nestled within the sprawling forests of the Germanic Rhineland. This was an era of profound faith but also of deep-seated anxieties, a time of social unrest, inexplicable plagues, and the birth of a terrifying new guide for persecution, the Malleus Maleficarum, the Hammer of Witches. Tonight, we don't just explore the historical framework of the early witch hunts. We delve into the chilling paranoia that gripped communities, where your neighbor could become your accuser, your friend could become a stranger, and the mere suggestion of witchcraft could be a death sentence. We'll experience the psychological torment, the creeping dread, when unexplained events turn a familiar world into a landscape of suspicion and terror. So, the question we pose to you is this: could you survive facing not only the harsh realities of medieval life, the backbreaking labor, the ever-present threat of famine and disease, but also the insidious fear of the witchfinder's gaze, the weight of collective hysteria, and the chilling belief that magic, dark and malevolent, was undeniably real and perhaps dwelling right next door? If you find solace in these journeys to darker pasts and appreciate this immersive experience, do consider liking this video and subscribing to Grim Histories for Sleep for more tales from the shadowed corners of history. We value your presence in our community of nocturnal historians, and as always, we invite you to share in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is in your corner of the world. It connects us, even as we prepare to drift into the unsettling past. Now, settle in. Dim the lights, if you haven't already. Let the modern world, with its certainties and explanations, fall away like autumn leaves. Prepare for an immersive journey into a past where fear was a constant companion, and the line between reality and nightmare was perilously, frighteningly thin. Your ordeal is about to begin. The year is 1488. The chill of late autumn bites deeper than usual. You find yourself in the small, isolated village of Bachheim, a cluster of timber-framed houses and muddy tracks nestled deep within the dense, ancient forests of the Rhineland. The air, sharp and cold, carries the scent of damp earth, decaying leaves, and the ever-present reassuring aroma of wood smoke from a dozen hearths. But today, something else taints that familiar blend. A faint, unsettling undercurrent of anxiety, a metallic tang of fear that has clung to Bachheim like the morning mist for weeks. A biting wind, seemingly funneled by the narrow alleyways between the tightly packed homes, slices through your worn woolen tunic. You pull your rough-spun cloak tighter, the fabric coarse against your skin, offering little comfort against the encroaching cold or the deeper chill that seems to emanate from the heart of the village itself. Your first challenge of this day, beyond the gnawing emptiness in your stomach that signals the meager harvest, is navigating the palpable tension. The usual morning sounds, the blacksmith's hammer, the laughter of children, the gossip of women at the well, are muted, replaced by an unnatural quiet that seems to amplify every small noise. A shutter banging in the wind, a dog's nervous bark, and most disturbingly, the intermittent, pain-filled cries of a child. It is young Elara, the baker's usually robust 7-year-old daughter. For over a fortnight, she has been stricken with a terrifying illness that baffles her parents and the village's elder woman, old Freya, whose knowledge of herbs and poultices has always been Bachheim's first defense against sickness. Elara's cries, thin and reedy, drift from their small cottage near the sputtering watermill. each one seeming to tighten the invisible knot of fear in the village square. This is where your story, your trial, truly begins. The familiar has become frightening, and the unknown presses in from all sides. Your life in Bachheim until recently was one of predictable rhythms, dictated by the sun and the seasons, much like it had been for your parents and their parents before them. You rise before dawn, the rough straw mattress doing little to cushion your bones from the chill that seeps up through the packed earth floor of your small shared cottage. Your days are spent in toil, tending to the meager strips of land allocated to your family, coaxing rye and oats from the unforgiving soil, or perhaps mending tools, weaving rough cloth, or helping with the communal tasks that keep Bachheim barely afloat. In the modern world, a bad harvest means higher prices at the supermarket, a dent in the economy. Here in 1488, a bad harvest means the very real spectre of starvation, the hollow ache in your belly becoming a constant companion through the long, lightless winters. This past year, the harvest was particularly lean. The summer rains came late, and then too fiercely, followed by an early frost that withered the already struggling crops. This hardship alone is enough to fray nerves, to shorten tempers. But Ilara's illness is different. It's not the familiar wasting sickness that sometimes takes the old, nor the summer fever that can sweep through the young. Her screams are punctuated by convulsions, her skin is unnaturally pale, and she speaks of dark shapes in the corners of her small room, her eyes wide with a terror that seems to see beyond the physical. Old Freya has tried every remedy she knows. Willow bark for fever, chamomile for calm, even a poultice of rarest mosses gathered from the deepest, oldest parts of the forest. Nothing avails, you know, Ilara. You've seen her chasing butterflies in the summer meadows, her laughter as bright and clear as the village stream. Now, when you pass the baker's cottage, you avert your gaze, not out of unkindness, but because the sounds from within are too raw, too unsettling. Her parents, Thomas and Matilda, once jovial and quick with a jest, are now hollow-eyed spectres, their faces etched with a grief that is rapidly curdling into something else, a desperate, fearful anger. It begins subtly, this shift, a hushed comment overheard by the well. It's not natural, this sickness. A sidelong glance at the cottage as if the illness itself might be contagious, not just physically, but spiritually. At the small cold stone church where you gather for Mass, Father Gregor, the village priest, seems more troubled than usual. He's a man whose faith is usually a robust, comforting presence, but his recent sermons have been darker, filled with warnings of unseen evils, of the devil's subtle machinations to lure souls from the path of righteousness. He doesn't speak of witches, not directly, not yet, but he speaks of hidden sins within the community, of God's displeasure, of the need for vigilance against the snares of the adversary. His words fall like seeds onto the fertile ground of anxiety. The Malleus Maleficarum, the Hammer of Witches, was published only last year in 1487, far from Bachheim, a scholarly Latin text compiled by Heinrich, Kramer and Jacob Sprenger. You and likely most in Bachheim have never heard of it, cannot read its dense arguments, yet its insidious ideas legitimizing and codifying the hunting of witches as a holy duty are beginning to percolate through the church, disseminated by traveling preachers, by concerned clergy like Father Gregor, who hear whispers from their superiors from towns where the fear has already taken deeper root. The notion that witches are not just solitary practitioners of folk magic, but members of a diabolical conspiracy, agents of Satan actively working to destroy Christendom, starts to seep into the collective consciousness. You try to rationalize Ilara's condition. Children fall ill. Sometimes they don't recover. It is the way of things, a harsh truth of your world. But the atmosphere in Bachheim is becoming infectious, a low-grade fever of suspicion. you find yourself scrutinizing your neighbors more closely. Old Man Hemlock, who lives alone by the disused charcoal burner's hut, always muttering to himself, is his eccentricity harmless or something more? What about the widow Elsa, whose cat is an unusually sleek and intelligent black, and who always seems to know things before they are widely spoken of? These are thoughts you would have dismissed weeks ago, but now they linger, unwelcome. The silence in Bachheim is the worst. It's an oppressive blanket, heavy and suffocating, broken only by Ilara's thin cries, the anxious bleating of livestock, or the sudden sharp caw of a crow that makes everyone start. The shadows in the narrow laneway seem to lengthen earlier each day, and the ancient trees of the surrounding forest loom like silent, judgmental figures. The smell of wood smoke still hangs in the air, but now it's mingled with the fainter, sharper scent of Freya's herbal concoctions, an aroma of desperate hope and failing remedies. You feel a knot in your own stomach that has little to do with hunger. It's the weight of unspoken, unacknowledged fear. One evening, as dusk bleeds into the chilling night, you are returning from gathering firewood, your back aching, your hands raw. You pass near the small overgrown cemetery by the church. Through the gloom you see two figures huddled close, their voices low and urgent. It's two of the village elders, men of standing. You pause, hidden by the deepening shadows of the church wall, and strain to hear. Their words are fragmented, carried on the biting wind, but you catch enough. Unnatural. This has been brought upon us. A dark influence. One of them mentions a night a fortnight past, a night of the new moon, when strange lights were supposedly seen flickering deep within the whispering woods, the oldest part of the forest that even the boldest hunters tend to avoid. The other nods grimly. There is a canker in our midst, a hidden rot. God is testing us, or someone is doing the devil's work. Their words send a shiver down your spine that has nothing to do with the cold. A canker, a hidden rot. Someone. The unnamed fear is starting to coalesce, to seek a name, a face. And as you hurry towards the flickering, uncertain light of your own home, you can't shake the feeling that Bachheim is standing on the precipice of something truly terrible. Slight pause, a subtle shift in background hum, or a new, faint, unsettling sound. The days that follow seem to confirm the elders' grim pronouncements. Misfortune, once a sporadic visitor to Bachheim, now seems to take up permanent residence. It's not just Ilara's continued suffering, it's a cascade of smaller, yet deeply unsettling events. The milk in 3 households curdles overnight, despite the chill in the air. Not just slightly sour, but thick and ropey, with an unnatural greenish tinge. Old Man Hemlock's prize sow, due to farrow any day, is found dead. In her sty, her body strangely unmarked, her eyes wide with an almost human terror. Then a sudden violent hailstorm, out of season and localized almost entirely over Bachheim's meager fields, flattens the struggling winter rye shoots, a cruel blow to the already desperate hope for a survivable winter. In your modern understanding, these are explainable phenomena. Bacteria, unknown animal diseases, freak weather patterns. Science and meteorology offer rational explanations for what seems chaotic. But here, in 1488 in Bachheim, the world does not operate on such principles. For you and your neighbors, life is a tapestry woven with divine will, demonic interference, and the subtle magics of the natural world. When the threads of that tapestry begin to unravel, when the pattern of daily life is disrupted by inexplicable woes, the immediate assumption is not of natural causes, but of supernatural intervention. God's wrath, or worse, the active malice, of Satan and his earthly agents. The misfortunes are quickly linked by the ever-churning mill of village gossip. It's no longer just about Ilara, it's a pattern. First the child, then the milk, then the pig, now the crops. mutters a woman. At the well, her voice low but carrying. This is not chance. This is a curse. The word curse spreads like a contagion, whispered in homes, hinted at in the marketplace, even felt in the strained silence of the church. The whispers, once vague and unfocused, begin to circle, like vultures sensing a kill. They start to converge on a particular figure. Agnes Mueller, a woman in her late 50s, a widow who lives alone in a small, slightly dilapidated cottage at the very edge of the village, where the cultivated fields give way to the dark moor of the Whispering Woods. Agnes is different. She's always been an outsider, not by birth. She was born in Bachheim, but by temperament. She's reclusive, sharp-tongued when provoked, and possesses an unnerving knowledge of herbs and folk remedies, skills inherited from her mother, who was also viewed with a mixture of respect and suspicion. Agnes has, in the past, healed minor ailments, helped deliver babies, even offered charms for luck or to ward off blight. These were accepted, if sometimes grudgingly. But now, in this new climate of fear, her knowledge is reinterpreted. Her remedies become suspect potions. Her solitary walks in the forest proof of secret assignations. Her sharp words evidence of a malevolent nature. Father Gregor, his face growing more gaunt and his eyes more fevered with each passing Sunday, speaks with increasing fervor of the devil's agents who walk among the faithful, disguised as ordinary folk, working to corrupt and destroy. He describes in vivid detail, gleaned perhaps from some traveling preacher's sermon or a tract that has found its way to him, the supposed pacts witches make with demons, the obscene rituals they perform, the blights they can call down upon crops and livestock. He doesn't name Agnes, he doesn't have to. Every villager's mind, now primed by fear and misfortune, fills in the blank. You've known Agnes your whole life. You remember as a child her giving you a sweet, potent cordial for a cough that had lingered for weeks. It worked when nothing else did. You recall her sitting with your own mother through a difficult labor with your youngest sibling, her calm presence a balm in the anxious room. These memories clash violently with the monstrous image now being painted of her. But the fear is a powerful solvent, dissolving old loyalties, corroding reason. You find yourself questioning your own recollections. Was the cordial merely herbal or something more? Was her calm during the birth an unnatural composure? The pressure to conform to the growing consensus is immense. To voice doubt, to speak up for Agnes, would be to draw suspicion upon yourself. In a small, isolated community like Bachheim, socials, cohesion is paramount for survival. But when that cohesion is built upon shared fear, it becomes a terrifying, almost sentient force. You feel the collective anxiety ratcheting up with each new incident, each fresh rumor. Your neighbors' faces are strained, their eyes darting nervously. Conversations cease abruptly when you approach certain groups. You start to wonder if they are talking about Agnes, or if perhaps they are starting to wonder about you. Did you not express enough outrage at the curdled milk? Did you seem too skeptical about the hailstorm's specificity? The fear of being associated with Agnes, or worse, of being the next one singled out, begins to take root in your mind like a tenacious weed. It's a cold, insidious dread that wakes you in the dead of night and makes your heart pound at the sound of an unexpected footstep outside your door. You find yourself scanning your own past behavior, your words, your interactions with Agnes. Did you ever accept a gift from her? Did you ever have a minor disagreement? Innocuous events, re-examined, through the warped lens of this rising panic, can take on sinister new meanings. The sensory tapestry of Bachheim is changing. The sour, unsettling smell of the curdled milk seems to linger in the air for days. The image of Old Man Hemlock's dead sow, its eyes wide and glassy, its body stiff and unnatural, flashes in your mind when you try to sleep. The unnatural darkness of the sky before the hailstorm, the percussive violence of the ice stones hammering the fragile shoots of rye. These are portents now, not just weather. The faces of your neighbors, once familiar and reassuring, are becoming masks of fear and suspicion. Even the taste of your meager bread seems tainted, ash-like in your mouth. One afternoon, the Reeve, Master Hoffman, the village's headman, responsible for order and minor justice, strides grimly to the center of the village square, his face set. He strikes the old iron plowshare that serves as Buckheim's bell 3 times, the discordant clang echoing through the unnaturally quiet village. A summons. Doors open slowly. People emerge, their faces wary. A village meeting is called. The atmosphere is not just charged. It feels like a tightly coiled spring ready to snap. Agnes Müller is notably absent. And as you walk towards the square, a knot of dread tightening in your chest, you know, with a chilling certainty that the unraveling thread of Buckheim's peace is about to be into a noose. The village square, usually a place of mundane commerce and casual greeting, is transformed into an impromptu courtroom, raw and charged with emotion. It's not a formal space of justice as you might envision from a modern perspective, with bewigged judges and complex legal arguments. Here in Buckheim, justice is a more visceral, communal affair, especially when fear holds the gavel. Master Hoffman, the Reeve, stands before the assembled villagers, his face a study in solemn duty and private worry. He's a farmer like most, chosen for his good sense, but today he carries the weight of Buckheim's unraveling sanity on his broad shoulders. The flickering light of a few hastily lit torches casts long, dancing shadows, making familiar faces seem alien and predatory. In your world, there's a concept called due process, a presumption of innocence until guilt is proven through verifiable evidence and impartial judgment. Such safeguards are flimsy to non-existent in this late 15th century village, particularly when the accusation is something as nebulous and terrifying as witchcraft. Here, accusation born of fear, fueled by misfortune and confirmed by collective. Agreement can be tantamount to a verdict. The power of suggestion, of shared hysteria, is an overwhelming force. Master Hoffman clears his throat, the sound unnaturally loud in the tense silence. Friends, neighbors, he begins, his voice strained. We are gathered because of the troubles that have befallen us. Young Alara still suffers. Our livestock perishes. Our crops are blighted. These are not ordinary times. He pauses, letting his words sink in. There have been whispers, accusations. A low murmur ripples through the crowd. Then a voice, sharp and angry, cuts through the twilight. It's Kurt, the farrier, a man known for his quick temper, and as it happens, a long-standing grudge against Agnes Müller over a disputed boundary line between their small plots of land. It's Agnes Müller, he shouts, his finger jabbing towards her distant dark cottage. She's the one. She's always been unnatural, with her strange ways and her muttering. The accusation, once spoken aloud, hangs in the air, stark and venomous. It's like a spark landing in dry tinder. Others immediately join in. Old Greta, her face contorted with a mixture of fear and righteousness, claims Agnes's gaze caused her best-laying hen to stop producing eggs. Young Wilhelm, a shepherd boy, his eyes wide, recounts how he once saw Agnes near the whispering woods at dusk. Consorting with shadows, he calls it, though what he truly saw was likely the old woman gathering herbs, as she had always done. His youthful imagination, stoked by the village's fear, has twisted a mundane event into something sinister. Another man, Hans, whose milk had curdled, cries out that he found a small, crudely fashioned doll of straw and twigs near his cowshed. The morning after, a poppet, he calls it, a tool of sympathetic magic to bring harm. He holds it aloft, a pathetic little effigy, now imbued with terrifying significance. Whether it was truly placed there by Agnes, by a malicious neighbor, looking to stir trouble, or was simply a forgotten children's toy no longer matters. In the current atmosphere, it is damning evidence. The term witch, hexa, is finally spoken aloud, hissed by one, then echoed by several others. It is a word heavy with dread, a word that conjures images of dark pacts, of malevolent power, of betrayal from within the community itself. It is a death sentence in waiting. You stand amidst this rising tide of accusation, a cold dread gripping your heart. You are part of this community, dependent on it, yet you feel an appalling sense of its collective power turning dark. You remember Agnes's kindnesses, small though they were, but now, even as you recall them, the fearful whispers of your neighbors begin to warp your own memories. Did she smile too knowingly when she offered that herbal tea? Was there a hidden meaning in her sharp retort to Kurt the farrier? The human mind, especially when gripped by fear and the overwhelming need to belong, to be safe, can be a treacherous thing. The desire not to stand out, not to attract the pointing finger to yourself, is a primal instinct. To defend Agnes now would be an act of extraordinary courage, an act that could easily see you standing beside her in accusation. You scan the faces around you. Some are openly furious, their fear manifesting as aggression. Others look merely frightened, their eyes wide, easily swayed by the loudest voices. A few, you notice, are silent, their expressions troubled, perhaps sharing your unease, but equally cowed by the mob mentality. Father Gregor is present, standing beside Master Hoffman, his face grim. He does not intercede to calm the crowd, but rather nods slowly as the accusations mount, as if seeing his dire prophecies fulfilled. The sensory details of the scene sear themselves into your mind. The acrid smell of the torches, the way the flickering light distorts features, the rising cacophony of angry, fearful shouts. You feel the press of bodies around you, the collective heat, the almost palpable wave of hysteria. It's an oppressive, suffocating feeling, as if the very air is thick with suspicion. Master Hoffman, looking increasingly overwhelmed, tries to restore some semblance of order. "Enough, enough," he calls out, raising his hands. "These are grave charges. Agnes Müller must be brought forth. She must answer." He doesn't say she will have a fair trial. He says she must answer. The distinction is chilling. The Reeves' words, meant perhaps to calm, instead send a shiver of anticipation and dread through you. Questioned. The word, in this context, does not suggest a gentle inquiry. It conjures images of coercion, of pain, of a foregone conclusion. As a group of grim-faced men, led by Kurt the farrier, detach themselves from the crowd and begin to march towards Agnes's cottage at the edge of the woods, a heavy silence falls, pregnant with the knowledge that a line has been crossed. Bachheim is now actively hunting one of its own, and you are a witness, a silent, fearful participant in its descent. Before the men dispatched to fetch Agnes can even return, a new element injects itself into Bachheim's unfolding drama, an event that will steer the course of the nascent witch hunt onto an even more terrifying path. A stranger arrives in the village. This is not unusual in itself. Bachheim, though isolated, sees occasional peddlers, traveling tinkers, or pilgrims passing through. But this man is different. He rides a tired, lean horse, and his clothes, though dusty from travel, are the dark, sober robes of a man of the church, not a simple village priest like Father Gregor, but someone of more learned bearing, perhaps a friar or a minor inquisitor. He introduces himself as Brother Matthias. He is tall and gaunt, with eyes that seem to burn with a cold, fervent light. He carries with him a heavy leather satchel, from which you later learn he can produce texts and citations with unnerving ease. He says he was traveling to a larger town to the north, but was guided by Providence, he claims, to take the less traveled path that led him to Bachheim, sensing a spiritual malaise in the region. It's a disturbingly convenient arrival. The Malleus Maleficarum, that hammer of witches, is still a new text, published only the previous year, 1487. It is unlikely Brother Matthias carries a physical copy, or if he does, that he would display it openly in such a small village. But its insidious doctrines, its scientific and theological framework for identifying, interrogating and exterminating witches are precisely the kind of knowledge that men like him are beginning to absorb and disseminate. It provided a blueprint for turning nebulous folk fears into a systematic, church-sanctioned persecution. It transformed the idea of a witch from a local malevolent figure into an agent in a grand, cosmic battle against God. Master Hoffman and Father Gregor, initially surprised by the stranger's arrival, quickly confer with him. You see them from a distance, their heads bowed together near the church. Father Gregor seems almost deferential to this newcomer, whose stern demeanor and air of authority clearly impress him. Brother Matthias speaks with a calm but unyielding conviction about the ever-present threat of witchcraft, the wiles of the devil, and the sacred duty of the faithful to root out this evil wherever it may fester. He speaks of the Malleus Maleficarum's core tenets without necessarily naming the book. That witchcraft is the most heinous of crimes, that denial by the accused is proof of demonic influence, that specific methods of interrogation are necessary to break the devil's hold and extract a confession. His presence acts as a catalyst. If some villagers still harbored private doubts, if Master Hoffman felt a twinge of unease about condemning Agnes on such flimsy and passion-fueled accusations, the arrival of Brother Matthias seems to validate the fear, to give it a stamp of higher learned authority. He is an outsider, free from local entanglements and grudges, and he speaks with the certainty of one who has studied these dark matters. This emboldens the accusers and further intimidates anyone who might have considered speaking in Agnes's defense. You observe Brother Matthias from afar, a chill settling deep in your bones. There is something in his piercing gaze, in the way he listens intently to Father Gregor's recounting of Bachheim's troubles, that is far more frightening than the loud, undisciplined anger of the villagers. Kurt's fury is hot and predictable. Brother Matthias's conviction is cold, methodical and seemingly unshakable. He offers to assist in the examination of Agnes, to ensure it is conducted properly, according to the latest understanding of how to deal with such matters. His offer is eagerly accepted. The men return from Agnes's cottage, dragging the terrified woman with them. She is disheveled, her eyes wide with fear and confusion. Her protests a mixture of frightened pleas and indignant denials. She is no longer the slightly eccentric but familiar neighbor, in the eyes of many, and certainly in the eyes of Brother Matthias. She is already the accused witch, her guilt presumed. You have a brief, terrifying interaction, or near interaction, with this man. Perhaps as Agnes is brought into the square, your eyes meet Brother Matthias's across the crowd. He doesn't know you, has no reason to single you out, yet his gaze seems to penetrate, to assess, to look for the taint of sin or sympathy for the accused. It's a look that is utterly devoid of compassion, filled only with a chilling certainty in his own righteousness and the pervasive evil he is committed to fighting. You quickly lower your eyes, a feeling of profound powerlessness washing over you. The situation, which was already dire, has just escalated. Bachheim's fear now has a voice of authority, a mind to direct it, and potentially a manual to guide its cruelty. The sensory details surrounding Brother Matthias are unsettling. The faint, musty smell of old parchment and incense that seems to cling to his dark robes. The way his voice, though rarely raised, cuts through the murmurs of the crowd, each word precise and laden with grim authority. The sight of his long, pale fingers clasped around a small wooden crucifix, or perhaps tapping thoughtfully against a worn, leather-bound book he keeps in his satchel. He is the embodiment of a new, more terrifying phase of this ordeal. Agnes Möller, bewildered and trembling, is brought before Master Hoffmann, Father Gregor, and now the imposing figure of Brother Matthias. The ad hoc village meeting is about to transform into a formal interrogation, guided by principles that leave little room for innocence. The questioning is about to begin, and with Brother Matthias overseeing it, you sense it will be a systematic dismantling of Agnes's will, a process designed not to find truth, but to confirm a pre-existing belief in her guilt. The shadow of the Malleus, whether named or not, has fallen heavily upon Bachheim. The questioning of Agnes Möller does not take place in the open village square under the fading light of day. Instead, she is taken to the small, damp vestry attached to the church, a cold, stone-walled room usually reserved for storing liturgical garments and communion wine. It is a space meant for sacred things, now repurposed for a grim and profane ritual of fear. In your modern world, an interrogation room, however stark, has certain protocols, legal representation, the recording of proceedings. Here, the vestry becomes a chamber of unchecked power, where the accused faces her interrogators alone, stripped of dignity and defense. Brother Matthias presides, his presence dominating the small room. Father Gregor assists, his initial unease now replaced by a fervent desire to see the truth revealed, while Master Hoffmann, the Reeve, observes with a troubled but largely passive expression, his authority effectively ceded to the knowledgeable outsider. You are not in the room itself, few are, but the details, stark and chilling, seep out into the waiting village like a poisonous miasma, whispered by those who catch glimpses or overhear muffled sounds, and amplified by the horrified imagination of the community. The methods employed are a horrifying blend of psychological manipulation and, implicitly, the threat of physical torment, all sanctioned by the kind of logic found within the Malleus Maleficarum. Agnes, already terrified and confused, is subjected to relentless questioning that stretches for hours, through the night and into the bleak dawn. She is deprived of sleep, offered no food or water. The questions are leading, designed to trap and incriminate. Did you not feel a surge of anger when Kurt the farrier disputed your land? An anger strong enough to wish him ill? When old man Hemlock's sow died, did you not feel a secret satisfaction, knowing your herbs had sometimes failed to help his livestock before? Confess that you have turned from God and sought power from other, darker sources. Her denials, born of genuine innocence and bewilderment, are twisted into evidence of her cunning and demonic protection. The Malleus itself taught that witches were adept liars, shielded by Satan. If she weeps, her tears are dismissed as a witch's trick. If she remains stoic, her composure is seen as unnatural, a sign of a hardened heart. If she stumbles over a prayer, a common occurrence for anyone under extreme duress and exhaustion, it is taken as definitive proof that she cannot utter holy words. Brother Matthias speaks of looking for the witch's mark, a spot on the body supposedly left by the devil's touch, insensitive to pain. While the most invasive physical searches might be reserved for later, the threat hangs in the air, a promise of further humiliation and pain. He scrutinizes her for any mole, blemish, or scar, interpreting them through the lens of diabolical. Signage Agnes, a woman you knew as hardy and resilient, begins to break. Exhaustion, fear, and the relentless psychological battery wear down her defenses. Her voice becomes hoarse, her pleas for mercy weaker. You can only imagine her terror, isolated in that cold room, facing the unyielding conviction of Brother Matthias, a man who sees not a frightened old woman, but an agent of pure evil. You, like the rest of Bachheim, wait. The village is unnaturally still, the usual sounds of life suspended. The only activities are those related to the questioning, the hushed delivery of a lamp to the vestry, the occasional silhouette moving past its single grime-streaked window. You are forced to witness this process from a slight remove, or more accurately, to exist in the oppressive atmosphere it creates. The injustice is a palpable thing, a sour taste in your mouth. Yet the fear of contagion, of being tainted by association if you speak out, is a powerful silencer. Your mind becomes a battleground. One part of you, the part that remembers Agnes as a human being, feels a profound sense of horror and pity. This is wrong. This is cruel. This is not justice. But another part, the instinct for self-preservation, whispers a chilling counter-argument. What if they are right? What if she truly brought this suffering upon us? And even if they are wrong, what can I do? To interfere is to risk becoming the next suspect. This internal conflict is agonizing. You see how easily a community, your community, can be turned into a beast devouring its own in a frenzy of fear. Agnes, the woman, is disappearing, being replaced by Agnes, the witch, a construct of their terror. The sounds from the vestry, though muffled, are deeply disturbing. Not necessarily screams of physical torture, not yet, but the relentless, monotonous drone of Brother Matthias's voice, punctuated by Agnes's increasingly faint and desperate replies. Sometimes a raised voice, sharp and accusatory, sometimes a heavy thud, as if something or someone has fallen. The air around the church grows thick with a dread that is almost tangible. The smell of old stone, damp earth, and the faint, cloying scent of the cheap tallow candles used for light all combine into an olfactory signature of this grim proceeding. Finally, as the first grey, unforgiving light of dawn seeps into the village, word spreads. Agnes has confessed. What she confessed to, under what precise pressures remains shrouded in the grim secrecy of the vestry. Perhaps she admitted to muttering curses, to making poppets, to meeting shadowy figures in the woods, admissions likely fed to her through leading questions, grasped at in a desperate attempt to end the torment. Or perhaps, in her delirium and despair, she uttered something incoherent that Brother Matthias chose to interpret as a confession of witchcraft. The transitional hook, the thing that will ensure this fire does not die with Agnes, comes with a chilling addition to her confession. Broken, exhausted, and likely desperate to make the questioning stop, or perhaps subtly guided by her interrogators, who are already looking for a wider conspiracy, as the Malleus suggested, Agnes is said to have named another. The witch hunt is not over, it is about to spread. The contagion of fear has found a new vector. The news that Agnes Müller has not only confessed to witchcraft, but has also implicated another villager, rips through Bachheim with the speed and destructive power of a forest fire. The relative calm that might have descended after a single scapegoat was identified is shattered. Instead, a fresh wave of panic, more intense and personal than before, washes over the community. Brother Matthias, his expression grimly satisfied, announces that Agnes, in her torment and repentance, he frames it as such, has revealed the existence of a hidden coven, a nest of Satan's servants within their very midst. This is a classic trajectory of witch hunts, a horrifying chain reaction. Accusations beget more accusations. Social tensions, old rivalries, petty jealousies, and the sheer unadulterated terror of being accused oneself could motivate people to point fingers. The Malleus Maleficarum and similar texts emphasize that witches rarely acted alone, that they gathered in sabbats, that they recruited others. Therefore, one confession was often seen not as an end, but as a beginning, a thread to pull to unravel a whole network of perceived evil. The name Agnes is purported to have uttered under duress is that of Martha Huber. Martha is the village midwife, a woman in her middle years, respected for her skill in bringing Bachheim's children into the world, but also, like many midwives of the era, vulnerable to suspicion. Her work straddled the mysterious line between life and death. She dealt with blood, with women's bodies, with infants who sometimes tragically did not survive despite her best efforts. Such a position, in an atmosphere charged with fear of witchcraft, could become perilous. Perhaps Martha had a disagreement with one of Agnes's initial, more fervent accusers. Perhaps her competence and knowledge were seen by some, including the less skilled Freya, whose remedies had failed Ilara, as unnatural. Or perhaps Agnes, in her agony, simply latched onto a familiar name, any name, to make the torment stop. The fear now slices directly into the heart of your daily life. Agnes was an outsider, easier to marginalize, easier to believe capable of dark deeds. But Martha has delivered babies for half the families in Bachheim, including perhaps your own siblings, or even you. She is a known quantity, a fixture of the community. If she can be a witch, then truly anyone can. The otherness that provided a thin veneer of safety when Agnes was the sole target is ripped away. The terrifying realization dawns. The witch hunt is not just about punishing a convenient scapegoat. It's about an insidious, creeping paranoia that can entangle anyone. You feel the change immediately. The whispers in the village square are no longer just about Agnes. They are about Martha, and then chillingly about who might be next. People start to scrutinize their own past interactions with Martha. Was her success with a difficult birth too easy, almost magical? Did she ever use herbs or charms that seemed a little too potent? Innocent actions, gestures of healing and support, are now reinterpreted through the dark filter of witchcraft. You find yourself doing the same, a horrifying betrayal of your own reason. You recall a time Martha successfully treated a nasty burn you received. At the time you were grateful. Now a cold voice whispers, how did she know exactly what to do? Was it skill or something else? You begin to examine your own words, your own actions, with a new frantic intensity. Did you ever speak too kindly of Martha? Did you ever defend her against some minor village gossip? Every casual interaction, every forgotten word becomes a potential piece of evidence against you in the unwritten indictment of public opinion. The trust that once bound Bachheim together is visibly crumbling. Neighbors eye each other with suspicion. Families argue behind closed doors, some urging caution, others succumbing to the rising hysteria. Who can you trust when the person who brought your child into the world is accused of being in league with the devil? The social fabric is tearing thread by thread. The sensory details of this new phase are sharp and visceral. The panicked whispers seem to cling to the damp air like cobwebs. You see Martha, her face a mask of disbelief and terror, being forcibly escorted from her small cottage by the same grim-faced men who took Agnes. Her children are crying, their small faces pressed against the window, watching their mother being dragged away. The sight is a brutal testament to the fear that has gripped your village. There's a growing sense of isolation, even when you are surrounded by people. Everyone is looking over their shoulder. Everyone is wondering who will be next. Then, as if to confirm Brother Matthias's pronouncements of a wider conspiracy and to pour fuel on the already blazing fire of fear, another misfortune strikes. During the night, a barn on the outskirts of the village, belonging to one of Agnes's most vocal accusers, burns to the ground. The glow of the flames lights up the sky, a terrifying orange beacon against the oppressive darkness. The smell of smoke and burning animals fills the air. There is no doubt in anyone's mind, especially not Brother Matthias's, what this means. It is not an accident. It is an act of retaliation by the coven. It is proof that the evil is still active, still powerful, and that more witches remain hidden among them. The ashes of the barn are still smoldering when the sun rises on a village now thoroughly in the grip of terror. The contagion of fear has taken firm hold, and its fever is rising. The hunt, far from being over, is set to escalate, and the list of potential victims is now terrifyingly open-ended. The burning of the barn acts as a terrible confirmation for Brother Matthias and a spur to his zeal. He proclaims that the devil's servants are lashing out, angered by the exposure of their members. The only recourse, he declares, is to redouble their efforts to purify Bachheim entirely. His gaze, already intense, now holds a fanatical gleam. He announces that a more thorough examination of certain villages is necessary, specifically the search for the stigma diabolicum, the devil's mark, also known as the witch's mark. In your modern understanding, a mark might be a tattoo, a brand deliberately chosen. But in the terrifying logic of the 15th century witch hunt, the devil's mark was believed to be a blemish, a mole, a patch of insensitive skin, or any unusual spot on the body, supposedly left by the devil himself, when claiming his new recruit, or by a demon familiar suckling. Finding such a mark was considered irrefutable proof of a pact with Satan. The Malleus Maleficarum and other tracts describe these marks in detail, providing guidance on how to find them, often through pricking the accused's body with needles. If a spot did not bleed or feel pain, it was deemed a mark. The humiliation and terror of this procedure are difficult to overstate. There is no concept of bodily autonomy, no privacy, when the salvation of the entire village, and indeed Christendom itself, in Brother Matthias's view, is deemed to be at stake. Those to be examined are primarily individuals who had any association with Agnes or Martha, those who had expressed even mild skepticism about the proceedings, or simply those who were considered different or had attracted some form of negative attention in the past. Unfortunately, you find that your previous attempts to remain unobtrusive, your quiet anxieties, have not kept you entirely from notice. Perhaps your family had a known friendship with Martha's, or you were seen speaking a civil word to Agnes, too close to the time of her initial accusation. The examinations are conducted in the same cold vestry, now a place of almost palpable dread. One by one, those selected are brought in. You are not spared. The fear that clutches at you as you are summoned is a cold, sickening thing, a knot of ice in your stomach. You pray frantically that your skin is unblemished, that no innocent mole or freckle will be misinterpreted by the grim-faced examiners, Brother Matthias himself, assisted now by a few zealous village men who have appointed themselves his deputies. You are forced to strip in the cold room, your shame and fear a burning torment. Your body, which you know to be ordinary, is subjected to the intrusive, impersonal scrutiny of these men. They search for any deviation, any imperfection. Brother Matthias, his eyes cold and appraising, might use a small sharp pin to test certain spots, his touch chillingly professional. Each prick of the needle is a small agony, not just of the flesh, but of the spirit. You see the fear on the faces of others who undergo this ordeal, the shame in their eyes, the way they try to shrink into themselves. Some are old, some young. No one is exempt if suspicion falls upon them. Imagine the contrast. In your modern life, a doctor's examination is for healing, conducted with consent and privacy. Here the examination is for condemnation, a violation designed to find proof of ultimate evil in the most mundane imperfections of the human body. The concept of the devil's mark, an invisible sign of allegiance to Satan, terrifies everyone because it is so arbitrary. Anyone could possess such a mark without knowing it, an innocent mole transformed into a seal of damnation by the will of the accusers. The sensory details are stark, the cold stone against your bare feet, the damp chill of the vestry air on your exposed skin, the sharp metallic smell of fear mixed with the musty odor of the room, the glint of the pin in Brother Matthias's hand. The hushed, almost breathless anticipation of the examiners, the stifled sobs or sharp intakes of breath from those being examined. It is a profoundly degrading experience, designed to break the will as much as to find evidence. And then, it happens. Not to you, not this time, but to a young man named Eric. Eric was known for being somewhat rebellious, prone to questioning authority, with a quick wit that sometimes bordered on insolence. He had scoffed openly at some of the initial accusations against Agnes. During his examination, Brother Matthias triumphantly declares he has found a mark, a small, oddly shaped mole on Eric's shoulder that, when pricked, allegedly does not bleed and causes Eric no apparent pain, though he cries out otherwise. Eric's desperate denials are dismissed. He is immediately bound and thrown into the lightless, foul-smelling village lockup, a tiny shed normally used for petty thieves. The net has widened. A mark has been found. The existence of the coven is now, in Brother Matthias's eyes, and in the eyes of the increasingly terrified and zealous villagers, confirmed beyond doubt. Your own examination might have concluded without such a dire finding, leaving you shaken but temporarily passed over. Yet the relief is fleeting, tainted by the horror of what happened to Eric, and the chilling knowledge that the criteria for accusation are terrifyingly broad and subjective. You are left with a deep, internal wound of fear and humiliation, and the terrifying awareness that your body, your very skin, can be used as evidence against you. The days following Eric's denouncement are thick with a new, more personal kind of fear. With Agnes and Martha already condemned and Eric now marked, Brother Matthias speaks of the coven being cornered, but warns that its remaining members will be desperate. The village is encouraged to recall any unusual behavior, any suspicious incidents, no matter how trivial they may have seemed at the time. It's an open invitation for grudges to be settled, for personal vendettas to be pursued under the cloak of righteous zeal, or simply for the terrified to deflect suspicion from themselves by casting it upon another. You had hoped that by remaining quiet, by showing outward conformity, you might escape the widening gyre of the witch hunt. But in such an atmosphere, neutrality is often impossible. Silence can be interpreted as cunning, a lack of visible piety, as a sign of hidden corruption. It starts with a whisper, as it so often does. Someone, perhaps one of Kurt the Farrier's cronies or old Greta, who is now convinced of a widespread conspiracy, remembers something about you. It's an innocuous event, twisted and remagnified through the lens of suspicion. Perhaps you were seen gathering herbs in the woods a few weeks prior. Not an uncommon activity, but Agnes also gathered herbs, and the woods are now seen as a place of illicit meetings. Or maybe you offered a piece of your meager bread to Martha's distraught children after she was taken. An act of simple human kindness, now reinterpreted as sympathy for a witch, a sign of allegiance. Perhaps it was an odd comment you made weeks ago, before the fear fully took hold. You might have idly questioned the cause of the initial milk curdling, suggesting a natural explanation, a moment of modern rationalism slipping into your 15th century persona. At the time, it was ignored. Now recalled by someone eager to find new culprits, it sounds like defiance, like someone trying to divert attention from the true, supernatural cause. Or maybe, during one of Father Gregor's increasingly fiery sermons, your gaze wandered, or you failed to display sufficient fervor in your responses. A lack of performative piety can be damning. The whispers are insidious. You don't hear them directly at first, but you feel them. You notice how conversations abruptly stop when you approach. You see the sidelong glances, the way neighbors, who once greeted you warmly, now hurry past with barely a nod, their faces averted. Your few friends, if you had any you trusted, become distant, their fear for their own safety outweighing any loyalty to you. The terror is no longer a diffuse, communal anxiety. It is a sharp, pointed thing aimed directly at you. It is paralyzing. You replay every interaction, every word you've spoken for the past months, searching for what could have possibly marked you. The truth is, it could be anything, or nothing at all. In a witch hunt, the accusation itself creates the reality of guilt in the minds of the accusers. Your modern understanding of justice, of the burden of proof, offers no comfort here. You know you are innocent of witchcraft, because you know witchcraft as they conceive it. Pacts with the devil, malevolent spells, is not real. But your knowledge is useless. Their belief is absolute, and it is their belief that shapes this reality. The sensory details of this period are ones of acute isolation and paranoia. The sudden chill in your interactions with people you've known your entire life is more cutting than the autumn wind. The way children, who once played freely near your dwelling, are now hurried away by their parents if you come near. The burning shame you feel when you walk through the village, knowing that unseen eyes are watching, judging, condemning. Sleep becomes a refuge you can rarely find. Your nights filled with anxious thoughts, replaying conversations, imagining accusations. Your heart pounding at every creak of your cottage door, every rustle in the thatch. You feel utterly alone, adrift in a sea of fear and hostility. The whispers grow louder, more confident. They coalesce into a narrative. They say you were always too quiet, too watchful. Someone saw you near the riverbank the night of the new moon, acting strangely. You never showed proper grief when Ilara first fell ill, did you? Lies, distortions, and terrified imaginings are woven together into a tapestry of your supposed guilt. And then, the moment you have been dreading arrives, with an awful finality. Master Hoffman, his face etched with a mixture of reluctance and grim duty, accompanied by two of Brother Matthias's self-appointed deputies, appears at your door. There are no gentle questions this time. The accusation is direct, brutal. You are accused of witchcraft, Master Hoffman states, his voice flat, avoiding your eyes. You must come with us. The whispers have done their work. They have solidified into a formal, undeniable accusation. Your world, already precarious, shatters. Once formally accused, you are plunged into a nightmare from which there seems to be no awakening. The powerlessness of your situation is absolute. In your modern world, an accusation is the beginning of a legal process, a chance to present a defense, to call witnesses, to challenge evidence. Here in Bachheim, under the shadow of Brother Matthias and the terror he has cultivated, the accusation is virtually synonymous with conviction. Any attempt at defense is often viewed as further proof of guilt, the cunning deceptions of a witch, aided by the devil. You are brought before Brother Matthias and the village council, which now consists of Master Hoffman, Father Gregor, and a few prominent village men, all of whom seem to defer entirely to Matthias's judgment. The setting might be the church itself this time, before the altar, a deliberate staging to emphasize the religious gravity of the proceedings. The battle between God and Satan that Brother Matthias believes he is waging. The evidence against you is presented. It is a chaotic jumble of hearsay, misremembered events, outright fabrications, and the reinterpretation of your innocent actions through the dark lens of witchcraft. The herbs you gathered are now ingredients for malevolent potions. The kindness you showed to Martha's children is proof of your allegiance to her supposed coven. Your quiet nature is seen as secretive and suspicious. Your past moment of rational skepticism about the curdled milk is presented as an attempt to deny the power of the devil, a common tactic of witches. Witnesses, some genuinely believing, some coerced, some motivated by their own fears or malice, step forward to offer their damning testimonies. You try to speak, to defend yourself. Your voice trembles, but you attempt to explain the true context of your actions, to appeal to reason, to the memory of who you were in the community. I gathered those herbs for a healing tea, as my mother taught me. I pitied Martha's children. They were frightened and alone. I am a good Christian, I fear God. Your pleas fall on deaf ears. Brother Matthias listens with a cold, patient smile, occasionally interjecting with a sharp question designed to twist your words, to trap you in a contradiction. If you are so innocent, he might ask, his voice like velvet over steel, why did you not immediately denounce Agnes when her evil was first suspected? Why did you show sympathy for the family of a known witch like Martha? These are not the actions of a true believer, but of one who shares their dark allegiances. The logic is impenetrable, circular. Your fear is interpreted as guilt. Your attempts to remain calm are seen as unnatural composure. Your tears are witches' tricks. There is no way to prove your innocence, because innocence itself is not a concept that holds much currency here. The narrative of your guilt has already been written by the collective fear and the unshakable conviction of Brother Matthias. You are trapped in their nightmare logic, a fly in a spider's web. You look at the faces in the room. Master Hoffman looks deeply uncomfortable, his gaze fixed on the floor, but he says nothing to intervene. Father Gregor nods along with Brother Matthias's pronouncements, his eyes shining with a disturbing, fervent light. The other villagers present are a mixture of fear, morbid curiosity, and a grim sort of satisfaction that another perpetrator of their misfortunes is being brought to justice. You see no sympathy, no flicker of doubt that might offer a sliver of hope. The sensory details of this interrogation are overwhelming, the hostile faces that surround you, seeming to press in. The weight of their collective conviction, a tangible force in the oppressive air of the church. The sound of your own voice, small and desperate against the chorus of accusation. The smell of fear, your own, sharp and metallic, mingled with the scent of incense and old stone. The way the stained glass windows of the church, meant to depict scenes of hope and salvation, now seem to mock you with their vibrant, unattainable light. Brother Matthias concludes the proceedings by declaring that your denials are unconvincing, your explanations further proof of your cunning. He states that while your guilt is evident to him, a more definitive sign is required to convince any lingering doubters and to satisfy divine justice. He announces that you will be subjected to an ordeal, a trial by God, to reveal your true nature. The word ordeal strikes a new kind of terror into your heart. You know what this means. It is not a trial of evidence, but a physical test, often brutal, where survival itself can be taken as a sign of guilt. The specific ordeal chosen for you, he announces with grave solemnity, will be the judicium aquae frigidae, the ordeal by cold water. They will test if the pure element of water will accept you or reject you as an unholy creature. Your fate is to be thrown into the icy river. The ordeal by water, or swimming a witch, was a practice with ancient roots, though by the late 15th century it was officially discouraged by the higher echelons of the church in many regions as being superstitious and unreliable. However, in isolated communities gripped by panic, and particularly when sanctioned by a figure like Brother Matthias, who could lend it a veneer of theological justification, such practices could easily resurface. The logic was as cruel as it was inescapable. Water, being a pure element used in baptism, would supposedly reject a witch, causing her to float. If the accused sank, they were considered innocent, but often drowned or died from exposure in the process. It was, in many cases, a no-win situation. You are dragged from the church towards the river that flows past Bachheim, the same river that powers the mill and provides water for the village. Its banks, usually a place of laundry, fishing, or quiet contemplation, are now lined with the entire populace of Bachheim, their faces a mixture of morbid excitement, fear, and grim anticipation. Brother Matthias walks at the head of the procession, holding aloft his crucifix, intoning prayers and calling upon God to deliver a clear sign of your guilt or innocence. The air is cold, the sky a bleak, unforgiving grey. The river water looks dark and menacing, its current swirling with an icy power. Your hands are bound tightly behind your back, and a rope is tied around your waist, held by two stout villagers on the bank, not as a safety measure, but to retrieve your body whether you float or sink. Absolute terror consumes you. This is not a trial, it is a spectacle, a ritual sacrifice to appease the village's fear. As you stand at the river's edge, the cold mud squelching beneath your bare feet, you look out at the faces in the crowd. Are these the same people you shared festivals with, worked alongside in the fields, greeted each morning? Their expressions are largely unreadable, transformed by the collective hysteria. Some jeer, already convinced of your guilt. Others watch, in fearful silence, perhaps with a dawning horror at what is about to happen, but too cowed to object. You think of your life, your hopes, your simple existence, about to be extinguished by this madness. Do you scream curses at them? Do you plead for mercy one last time? Do you pray for a miracle or resign yourself to the inevitable? Your mind is a whirlwind of fear and despair, the struggle for survival, the primal urge to live, wars with the crushing weight of their superstition and your utter helplessness. The sensory experience is overwhelmingly intense. The shock of the frigid autumn air on your skin, knowing the water will be even colder. The roar of the crowd, or is it a terrifying, expectant silence, broken only by Brother Matthias's chanting and the murmur of the river? The rough chafe, the ropes cutting into your wrists and waist. The murky, unwelcoming appearance of the water, reflecting the grey sky. This sky above you, perhaps it's the last thing you will ever see with clarity. With a rough shove, you are cast into the river. The shock of the icy water steals your breath, a brutal, all-encompassing cold that seeps into your bones instantly. You struggle instinctively, but your bound hands make it impossible to swim. The heavy wool of your clothing becomes waterlogged, dragging you down. For a moment, you sink, the dark water closing over your head, the sounds of the crowd muted, a terrifying, disorienting silence. Is this it? Is this the innocence that also means death? But then, with a strange buoyancy, perhaps due to trapped air in your clothes or the currents, your body bobs back to the surface. You float, gasping, sputtering, the cold burning your lungs. A great cry goes up from the bank. Brother Matthias points a triumphant finger. Behold, the water rejects her. She floats. She is a witch, condemned by God's own sacred element. The logic is insane, but it is their logic. Floating is proof of guilt. You are quickly hauled from the river by the ropes, shivering uncontrollably, your teeth chattering, half drowned, but damningly buoyant. You lie on the muddy bank gasping for air, the cold a torment, looking up at the faces of your accusers. There is no pity in their eyes, only confirmation of their deepest fears. Some villagers even recoil, as if your very touch, your very presence is now a source of contamination. The ordeal has sealed your fate. You have been proven a witch, not by evidence or reason, but by the cruel caprice of water and fear. The brief, desperate hope that sinking might have brought, even if it meant oblivion, is extinguished. You are alive, but only to face what comes next. Condemned by the ordeal, your fate is swift and terrible. There are no further appeals, no avenues for mercy. Brother Matthias declares that God has spoken, and the sentence for a witch, proven and unrepentant, for he deems your continued, albeit weak, pleas of innocence as defiance, is death by fire. Burning at the stake was considered a purifying act, a way to destroy the witch's physical body, and thus supposedly to prevent her soul from further commerce with the devil, while also serving as a horrifying public spectacle and warning. To others, the preparations for your execution begin with an unnerving efficiency. The village square, the site of the initial accusations, is to be the stage for your final moments. Under Brother Matthias's direction, men are dispatched to gather dry wood, old timbers, anything that will burn fiercely. The stake itself, a heavy wooden post, is dragged into the center of the square and laboriously erected, its dark silhouette stark against the gray sky. You are likely held in the village lockup, the same squalid shed where Eric is imprisoned, or perhaps in the cold vestry, now your death row cell. You are in a daze of horror, disbelief, and a bone-deep chill that the ordeal's icy water seems to have permanently imprinted upon you. Through the small cracks in the wall, or as you are briefly allowed out under heavy guard, you see the preparations. You hear the sounds, the thud of axes splitting wood, the shouts of men as they construct the pyre, the hammering as the stake is secured. Each sound is a nail in the coffin of your hope. The faces of the villagers are a blur. Some, you notice, seem to work with a grim enthusiasm, their fear channeled into this violent collective act. Others appear more subdued, their expressions unreadable, perhaps horrified but too frightened to show it. Children, drawn by the grim activity, watch with wide, uncomprehending eyes, their innocence about to be scarred by the brutality their elders are preparing. In your modern understanding, execution is a state-sanctioned act, however controversial, usually hidden from public view, or at least not a communal festival of death. Here, it is a public ritual, a religious and social event designed to cleanse the community and reaffirm its boundaries. The smell of burning often preceded such events if other executions had occurred in the region, or it might be the sharp, resinous scent of the freshly cut wood being piled high. Your thoughts turn to your life, the small joys, the mundane routines, all about to be consumed by flames. What will happen to your family if you have one? Will they be tainted by your fate? The utter finality of it is a crushing weight. You are completely at the mercy of their fear, their superstition, their righteous fury. Any remaining fight drains out of you, replaced by a cold, desolate despair. The sensory details are overwhelmingly grim. The persistent, acrid smell of dry wood and perhaps pitch or tar being prepared to ensure the fire catches quickly. The rhythmic, almost hypnotic sound of hammering and chopping. The sight of the growing pyre, a monstrous wooden beast waiting to consume you. The murmuring of the crowd that gathers, their voices a low, ominous hum. The cold dread that settles in your bones, a chill far deeper than the river's embrace. You feel a profound sense of detachment, as if you are watching your own demise. From outside your body, the time for your execution approaches. You are roughly pulled from your confinement, your hands bound tightly before you. You are paraded through the village towards the square, a final, humiliating procession. Some villagers hurl insults, perhaps even stones or rotten vegetables. Others simply stare, their faces blank or filled with a morbid curiosity. Father Gregor walks ahead, chanting prayers for your soul, though they sound more like condemnations. Brother Matthias follows, his expression one of solemn triumph, the instrument of God's justice. You reach the square. The pyre is complete, a horrifying structure of wood and kindling, built around the central stake. The crowd is a sea of faces, a wall of humanity that has judged you and found you wanting. This is it, the brink of the pyre. There is no escape, no hope, only the terrible certainty of a fiery, agonizing death. As they begin to tie you to the stake, the rough wood scraping against your skin, you look up at the sky one last time, a silent scream trapped in your throat. Just as the torch is about to be put to the pyre, as the heat from the assembled wood already begins to warm your skin with a terrifying promise of what's to come, a sudden interruption shatters the grim tableau. Shouts are heard from the edge of the village, followed by the sound of galloping hooves. A rider, mud-spattered and urgent, bursts into the square, his horse rearing as he pulls it to a halt. He is a messenger, bearing a dispatch from the nearest sizable town, the seat of a local baron or a higher church authority. Historically, not all witch hunts careened to their deadliest conclusions. Sometimes interventions from higher secular or ecclesiastical authorities who might be more skeptical of local hysteria or concerned about abuses of justice did occur. Sometimes the sheer scale of accusations in a region might prompt a review, or the panic might simply exhaust itself, especially if the remedies and the executions failed to alleviate the misfortunes they were supposed to solve. For your story, this intervention is not a heroic last-minute rescue in the modern sense, but a more ambiguous fracturing of the witch hunt's terrible momentum. The messenger dismounts, pushing through the stunned crowd, and hands a sealed document to a bewildered Master Hoffman, who in turn shows it to Brother Matthias. There is a hurried, agitated conference. The crowd murmurs, confused and anxious. You, still bound to the stake, watch with a dazed, almost unbelieving flicker of hope, so faint it's almost painful. The news as it slowly filters out is complex. It seems reports of Brother Matthias's fervent activities and the growing number of accusations and condemnations in this isolated region have reached the ears of a higher authority, perhaps a bishop less inclined to endorse the extreme methods promoted by texts like the Malleus, or a secular lord concerned about the breakdown of order and the loss of taxable peasants in his domain. The dispatch does not declare you innocent, nor does it outright condemn Brother Matthias. Rather, it orders a suspension of all further executions in Bachheim and the surrounding hamlets pending a review by a designated official who will arrive in some weeks. It speaks of concerns about irregular procedures and the potential for miscarriages of justice fueled by local panic. Simultaneously, or perhaps as a separate thread of this interruption, word might arrive that Ilara, the child whose illness was the initial spark for this whole nightmare, has taken an unexpected turn. Perhaps against all odds, she has made a sudden recovery, her fever breaking, her senses returning. Or more tragically but equally impactful in this context, she has finally succumbed to her illness. If she recovers, some might see it as a sign that God's anger has been appeased by the suffering already inflicted. If she dies, some might conclude that the witches already dealt with, Agnes, Martha, Eric, were indeed the cause and their punishment, or your impending one, was justified but no longer pressing. Now the primary victim is beyond help. Either event could subtly shift the village's emotional temperature, introducing an element of doubt or a feeling that the crisis has, in some way, passed its peak. Brother Matthias is visibly incensed by the order from his superiors. He argues, his voice tight with fury, about the dangers of leniency, the necessity of immediate action against Satan's forces. But the messenger is firm, and the seal on the document carries an authority that even Matthias cannot openly defy, without severe repercussions. For the first time you see him flustered, his cold certainty shaken. The impact on the villagers is one of confusion and uncertainty. The fervor of the moment is broken. Some look relieved, others frustrated, cheated, of the grim spectacle. The monolithic conviction that had driven them is fractured by this outside intervention and the ambiguity it brings. Master Hoffman, looking profoundly weary, orders you to be unbound from the stake but return to the lockup. You are alive, for now. It is not freedom, not exoneration. You are merely moved from the immediate shadow of the pyre back into the cold darkness of imprisonment. Your fate remains terrifyingly uncertain, hanging on the whims of distant authorities and the shifting mood of a village still steeped in fear. The trauma of your accusation, your ordeal, the brink of a horrific death, these things are seared into your soul. You might be released eventually, if the official review is thorough and skeptical, or if the panic in Bachheim subsides as other explanations for their misfortunes emerge or are simply forgotten in the face of new daily struggles. But you will forever be marked by this experience, viewed with suspicion, an outsider in your own community. The fear in Bachheim is not extinguished, merely banked like embers after a fire. It could easily flare again with a new misfortune, a new demagogue. As you sit in the darkness of your cell, the smell of smoke and fear still clinging to you, you know that the shadows in the corners of your eyes, the whispers in the wind, will linger for a long, long time. The immediate threat of the pyre has receded, but the psychological landscape of your world and that of Bachheim has been irrevocably scarred. And so your immediate ordeal in Bachheim reaches an uncertain pause. From the initial unsettling illness of young Ilara, you witnessed and experienced the insidious blossoming of fear. You saw how whispers, born of hardship and a belief in active, malevolent supernatural forces, could take root and flourish, choking out reason and compassion. You felt the weight of suspicion turn towards Agnes, then Martha, and finally, with crushing terror, towards yourself. You endured the dehumanizing search for a mark of evil, the nightmare logic of an accusation from which there was no true defense, the horrifying spectacle of the ordeal by water, and stood on the very precipice of a fiery death, saved not by justice but by the arbitrary intervention of a distant authority. The psychological torment, the crushing weight of collective hysteria, the chilling realization that your life hung by the thinnest thread of superstition. These are the true horrors you faced. So we return to our initial question, but with the grim wisdom of experience. Could you have truly survived? Perhaps you avoided the flames, yes, but survival is more than just the preservation of breath. Could you have survived the utter destruction of your world as you knew it? The loss of community, the betrayal by neighbors, the horrifying understanding. That truth and innocence were no shield against a tide of fear, amplified by the pronouncements of men like Brother Matthias, men armed with the terrible certainty of texts like the Malleus Maleficarum. Could you endure the haunting suspicion that would follow you always? The knowledge of how easily the familiar can become monstrous. Such an experience would inevitably shatter the certainties of a modern mind. Your understanding of justice, your faith in communal bonds, your perception of reality itself, all would be irrevocably altered. The paranoia would linger, a cold shadow in the back of your mind. Trust would become a precious, fragile commodity, difficult to extend, easily broken. The horror you experienced was not just the threat of death, but the terrifying ease with which reason was abandoned and humanity was sacrificed on the altar of fear and dogma. You would carry Bachheim with you, a scar upon your soul. You step back now out of the late 15th century, out of Bachheim's oppressive dread, and return to your own time. The flickering torchlight recedes, the scent of wood smoke and fear fades, but the faces of the accusers, the haunted eyes of the accused, the chilling conviction of Brother Matthias, these images remain etched in your mind. The Malleus Maleficarum may now be a historical artifact, relegated to dusty library shelves. Yet, the dark human tendencies it exploited, the fear of the unknown, the suspicion of the other, the desperate need for simple answers in complex times, the intoxicating power of collective righteousness, these are not confined to any single era. They are shadows that can still lengthen, still twist, still seek out victims in any age under different names through different means. Listen closely to the whispers of your own time. Observe how fear can be manipulated, how easily a they can be created and condemned. How certain are you truly that the witch hunt in all its varied and insidious forms is merely a relic of a distant, unenlightened past? The shadows of Bachheim stretch further than you might imagine. Thank you for joining us on this journey into the shadowed past with Grim Histories for Sleep. We hope this tale has offered you a uniquely immersive experience. If you wish to explore more such histories, please consider liking and subscribing. Until our paths cross again, may your nights be peaceful and your understanding of the shadows profound. Sleep well if you can.